Imagine walking through the silent corridors of the Great Pyramid at night. The torchlight flickers on walls carved with forgotten hieroglyphs, symbols the priests never wanted the common people to see. Behind these coded images lies a world of desire, ritual, and secret unions. Pharaohs were not only rulers of Egypt's land, but also of its most intimate mysteries. What if the greatest power of Egypt did not come from armies or gold, but from hidden practices locked away in the royal chambers? Tonight, you will uncover what history books rarely dare to whisper. Stay with me until the end of this journey, because what you're about to discover will completely change how you see the pharaohs of Egypt. If you truly want to unlock the hidden side of history, the secrets that shaped dynasties, the practices that gave kings the illusion of godhood, then watch carefully and don't miss a single moment. Egypt, the land of the Nile, has always been a place where mystery breathes through stone and sand. For thousands of years, the pharaoh was not simply a king. He was the living embodiment of Horus, son of the gods, destined to walk between heaven and earth. But behind the dazzling crowns, the golden masks, and the statues carved to perfection, lay another Egypt, a hidden one, where the most private aspects of life became instruments of power. The pharaoh's bedchamber was not only a place of pleasure, but also a stage where politics, magic, and religion played their roles. To understand the hidden sexual practices of Egyptian rulers, we must step into their mindset. In their world, intimacy was never just personal, it was divine. Every touch, every union, carried cosmic meaning. Belief held that the balance of the cosmos, the harmony of life and death, was maintained through ritual. The pharaoh's role was to embody this balance. Ancient texts suggest that in secret ceremonies, pharaohs would perform what was known as the sacred marriage. This was not just a symbolic ritual, it was a reenactment of the union between the god Osiris and the goddess Isis, or between the sky goddess Nut and the earth god Geb. By mirroring the divine act of creation, pharaohs believed they were ensuring fertility for the land, abundance for the Nile, and stability for the throne. But unlike modern weddings, these unions were often cloaked in mystery. Some records hint that pharaohs chose priestesses, sometimes even close royal relatives, to participate in these sacred rites. To the Egyptians, purity of bloodline was essential. Intimacy within the royal family was not seen as scandalous. It was divine preservation of the godly seed. What outsiders might call taboo, Egyptians celebrated as holy. Beyond the sacred rituals, pharaohs were also men of flesh and blood. Their palaces housed vast harems, collections of wives, concubines, and foreign princesses offered as tokens of diplomacy. Each woman represented both desire and politics. A single union could seal peace between Egypt and a rival kingdom, or cement loyalty among nobles. But inside the harem, life was far from simple. Competition, jealousy, and betrayal often simmered beneath the surface. Some women wielded incredible influence, whispering in the pharaoh's ear, shaping decisions that altered the fate of Egypt. Others plotted in the shadows, hoping to see their son ascend the throne. The pharaoh's private life was therefore never truly private. It was a battlefield, fought not with swords, but with seduction, charm, and cunning. The Egyptians believed in the magical power of desire. Intimacy was not merely physical. It was an act tied to spells, amulets, and rituals designed to strengthen vitality and extend life. In papyri preserved from ancient times, we find recipes for potions, oils, and charms used to enhance passion. Priests whispered incantations over perfumed unguents, and lovers wore amulets carved with the eye of Horus or the Ankh, the symbol of life, believing they could transform desire into divine energy. Pharaohs, who were seen as gods on earth, often surrounded themselves with this magical atmosphere. Their private unions were believed to fuel their power, not just in the palace, but across the empire. Not every practice was celebrated openly. Some rituals were carefully hidden, reserved only for the pharaoh and a chosen few. Inscriptions erased from temple walls suggest that there were rites too controversial to be preserved for the public eye. Scholars believe some of these acts involved symbolic performances of creation myths, reenactments so intimate that later generations might have found them scandalous. Why were these practices hidden? Perhaps because they blurred the line between human passion and divine command. To the pharaoh, nothing was ordinary. His every act, even in secrecy, was tied to the destiny of Egypt. To reveal too much of this private power risked diminishing his sacred aura. While pharaohs are often portrayed as dominant figures, their queens also played vital roles in these secret traditions. Queens like Nefertiti and Hatshepsut were not mere companions, but active participants in rituals. Some scholars argue that queens symbolized the goddess Hathor, the embodiment of love, beauty, and motherhood. The queen's presence in these rites reinforced the cosmic balance. In intimate union, pharaoh and queen became Osiris and Isis, rulers not only of Egypt but of the universe itself. Without her, the ritual was incomplete. This elevated queens to a divine status, making their role in the pharaoh's private world one of both intimacy and immense power. But secrets are never safe forever. Throughout history, whispers of forbidden liaisons, betrayals within the harem, and even murder spread through the courts of Egypt. In the 12th dynasty, records speak of plots where concubines conspired against the pharaoh. In the time of Ramesses III, a famous harem conspiracy nearly succeeded in overthrowing the king. Behind the veils of beauty and seduction, the pharaoh's private life was a source of vulnerability, as dangerous as any war. The hidden sexual practices of Egyptian pharaohs were never just about pleasure. They were about power, divinity, and control. To the pharaoh, intimacy was a tool to keep the cosmos in balance, to strengthen his dynasty, and to remind the world that he was more than human. He was the bridge between mortals and gods. When we peel back the golden mask of Tutankhamun or step into the ruined chambers of ancient temples, we sense that something deeper lies beneath. A story that historians only glimpse, but one that shaped the destiny of Egypt for over 3,000 years. Pause for a moment and imagine stepping behind the golden walls of ancient Egypt's greatest palaces. What if the secrets of the pharaohs, the rituals, the alliances, the forbidden unions, were not just stories, but the very forces that shaped the fate of an empire? Stay with me, because what you are about to discover will challenge everything you think you know about these god kings. Every choice, every whispered ritual, every hidden act of intimacy was a thread in the tapestry of power. Missing even one detail could mean losing the full picture of how Egypt's greatest rulers truly commanded their world. In ancient Egypt, intimacy was never simply personal. It was political, spiritual, and magical all at once. For the pharaoh, every act of closeness carried consequences far beyond the palace walls. To understand this world, we must see through their eyes. The pharaoh was not just a man, but a living god, a bridge between earth and the heavens. Every union in the royal chambers was carefully timed, sometimes guided by priests who interpreted celestial signs. Desire was considered sacred energy, capable of restoring balance to the kingdom. The pharaoh's body itself was thought to radiate life force, ensuring the fertility of the land and the well-being of his people. Fertility rituals were not merely symbolic. They were performed with precision, aligning with the cycles of the Nile, the stars, and the seasons. Each act reinforced the pharaoh's authority, linking his private life directly to the prosperity of Egypt. Pleasure, duty, and magic were inseparable. Marriages between siblings, half-siblings, and close relatives were a matter of divine necessity, not scandal. The pharaoh's bloodline was sacred, a continuation of the god's own lineage. By marrying within the family, the pharaoh ensured that his heirs carried an unbroken divine essence. This practice mirrored the myths of Osiris and Isis, gods whose sibling union symbolized creation and continuity. To the Egyptians, following this pattern was more than tradition, it was survival. The purity of the royal bloodline was believed to secure both the throne and the cosmos. The harem was far more than a collection of wives and concubines. It was a carefully managed court, a network of alliances, and sometimes a battlefield of influence. Foreign princesses brought from distant lands represented political treaties. Egyptian noblewomen brought legitimacy and reinforced loyalty. Inside this world, every smile, every gesture, every whispered word could shift power dynamics. Queens and concubines were not merely companions. They were participants in a delicate dance of influence. Their favor could elevate sons to the throne or undermine rivals in the shadows. Intimacy and politics were inseparable. Pleasure was always intertwined with strategy. Priests often oversaw these intimate rituals, adding layers of ceremony and symbolism. Oils, perfumes, amulets, and chants were used to transform desire into divine energy. The pharaoh's body became a vessel for magic. His union with queens and consorts was thought to channel cosmic power, ensuring the survival of the dynasty and the fertility of the land. These rituals, though secret, were essential. Without them, it was feared that the Nile might fail to flood, famine could strike, and the gods might turn their favor away from Egypt. In this context, intimacy was not indulgence, it was responsibility. Even within this sacred framework, whispers of forbidden acts persisted. Some rituals were too controversial to be recorded openly. Certain unions, gestures, and ceremonies were erased from history, remembered only in fragments or hints within ancient texts. These secrets suggest that the pharaoh's private life was far more complex, and sometimes dangerous, than we can fully understand today. Queens were far more than spectators. They embodied goddesses such as Hathor and Isis during these rituals, completing the cosmic balance. Their role in intimacy was as crucial as the pharaoh's. A queen's participation was believed to rejuvenate the king's power and reinforce the divine order. Some queens, like Nefertiti, were celebrated not just for beauty, but for their mastery of this sacred influence. Stop right here and imagine standing in the shadow of Egypt's greatest pyramids, feeling the weight of thousands of years of secrets pressing down. The pharaoh's private chambers, the whispers of queens, the sacred unions that shaped dynasties. These are not just tales. They are the keys to understanding the power, mystique, and survival of an empire. Stay with me now, because what you are about to uncover goes beyond history books, beyond myths, and into the hidden heart of Egypt itself. Every secret revealed in this chapter could change everything you thought you knew about the pharaohs. The private life of a pharaoh was a landscape of power, ritual, and consequence. Every act of intimacy was woven into the political, spiritual, and cosmic fabric of Egypt. Desire was never merely personal. It was a force of creation, a tool of influence, and a statement of divine authority. For the pharaoh, life did not end with death. Tombs, amulets, and inscriptions were filled not only with treasures and spells, but with promises of eternal pleasure and union. The Book of the Dead and other funerary texts reveal that the pharaoh's vitality, strength, and desire were to be preserved in the afterlife. His unions, sacred and private, were believed to continue beyond the mortal realm, ensuring immortality both for himself and the dynasty. This belief elevated every intimate act to cosmic importance. It wasn't simply about survival in life. It was preparation for eternity. Every ritual, every union, every moment of desire was a rehearsal for an immortal reign, where the pharaoh would continue to embody divine power. Queens were far more than companions. They were divine participants in the pharaoh's sacred role. Embodying goddesses such as Hathor and Isis, queens completed the cosmic balance, ensuring the king's energy was renewed. Their influence extended beyond ritual. Their presence in the chamber often determined succession, secured dynastic continuity, and reinforced political stability. Queens like Nefertari and Nefertiti exemplified this power. They were not passive participants, but active co-creators of the pharaoh's authority. Their favor could make or break heirs, solidify alliances, and even shape the destiny of the empire. Intimacy in this context was inseparable from governance and divine duty. Despite all the grandeur, the pharaoh's world was precarious. Hidden rivalries, jealous consorts, and forbidden passions constantly threatened the throne. Historical accounts, like the harem conspiracy against Ramesses III, reveal that private desire could become a weapon, turning the very mechanisms meant to preserve power into instruments of danger. Even sacred rituals carried risk. Priests who oversaw ceremonies wielded their own influence, and the wrong alignment of desire, timing, or union could upset both spiritual and political balance. To be a pharaoh was to walk a constant tightrope between human vulnerability and divine expectation. Much of what we know comes from fragments, erased texts, hidden papyri, and later accounts by Greek and Roman historians. This secrecy was intentional. The pharaohs understood that the true measure of their power lay in mystery. By concealing their most intimate practices, they maintained an aura of divinity, keeping the public in awe and potential rivals in check. Even today, As we gaze at pyramids and golden artifacts, the full truth remains just out of reach. The hidden practices of the pharaohs were as important as their public ceremonies. They were the invisible foundation upon which the empire rested. The intimacy of pharaohs was not merely physical or personal. It was political, magical, and eternal. Desire was harnessed as power. Ritual was intertwined with statecraft. Queens, consorts, and priestesses were not just participants but instruments and protectors of dynastic destiny. These hidden practices shaped not only lives but entire civilizations. They remind us that history is rarely as simple as it seems. Power is often forged in private moments, away from the eyes of the world, and Egypt's greatest rulers understood that better than anyone. Before you step into this chapter, ask yourself one question. Do you really know the pharaohs, or do you only know what history allowed you to see? The pyramids, the temples, the golden masks, they are just the surface. But behind those monuments existed a private world of passion, secrecy, and desire. A world where intimacy was not simply pleasure, but a tool of politics, a ritual of divinity, and a dangerous game that could crown a new king or destroy a dynasty. Stay with me until the end of this chapter, because what you're about to discover is more shocking than anything written in textbooks. This is the story of hidden practices that shaped the destiny of Egypt itself. By the time you finish, you won't see the pharaohs the same way again. We imagine a pharaoh. We picture him standing tall in his crown, commanding armies, and building monuments. But much of his real power was exercised behind closed doors, in the private chambers of his palace. For the pharaoh, intimacy was not only a personal matter. Every encounter carried the weight of political calculation, divine expectation, and dynastic survival. The pharaoh's bedchamber was in many ways a political stage. Who was invited, who was favored, and who was ignored? These choices signaled alliances, rivalries, and the balance of power within the court. Unlike modern rulers, a pharaoh's personal life was inseparable from the state itself. Egypt's fertility, the Nile's abundance, and even the will of the gods were believed to be tied to the pharaoh's vitality and his unions with women. The pharaoh was considered the living embodiment of Horus on earth and Osiris in the afterlife. His queen often symbolized Isis, the divine mother and goddess of magic. Their union was not merely marital but cosmic. Each intimate act was seen as a reenactment of divine creation, securing harmony between heaven and earth. This belief elevated the pharaoh's private life into a sacred duty. If the Nile flooded properly, if harvests were abundant, it was attributed to the pharaoh's successful union with his queen. Conversely, natural disasters, famine, or unrest could be interpreted as a failure of balance in his private rituals. This connection gave intimacy a weight unlike anything in the modern world. It was a matter of survival for the entire kingdom. The word harem often evokes images of indulgence, but in ancient Egypt, the harem was closer to a political institution. It was filled with women of noble blood, foreign princesses, and sometimes commoners who had caught the pharaoh's eye. Each woman represented a possible alliance, a claim to succession, or a channel of influence. Inside the harem, hierarchies formed. Some women rose to prominence, gaining direct access to the pharaoh and becoming advisors behind the scenes. Others plotted in secret, hoping to elevate their sons as heirs. Far from being passive, many harem women were active political players, using their proximity to the pharaoh as leverage. The harem conspiracy against Ramesses III is one of the clearest examples. Driven by jealousy and ambition, members of his household plotted to overthrow him, using intimacy as both a weapon and a shield. This plot ultimately led to betrayal, trials, and executions, proving how dangerous the pharaoh's private world could become. Egypt was not isolated. It engaged with neighboring kingdoms, Nubia, the Levant, Mesopotamia, and beyond. Diplomacy was often sealed not with treaties alone, but with marriages and unions. Foreign princesses were sent to Egypt to join the pharaoh's harem, creating bonds that could prevent war or secure trade routes. These women, however, were not mere gifts. They brought their own traditions, languages, and sometimes hidden agendas. A foreign princess might act as a silent diplomat for her homeland, influencing the pharaoh's policies. Others introduced new cultural practices, shaping Egypt's evolving court life. Desire thus became an international language of power. Every union extended Egypt's influence, but also introduced risks, divided loyalties, rivalries within the harem, and conflicts over succession when children of foreign mothers claimed legitimacy. Not all unions were sanctioned. Some pharaohs were rumored to have pursued forbidden relationships, whether with priestesses dedicated to the gods or with women whose rank made them unsuitable partners. These acts risked both scandal and divine disfavor. One of the most whispered rumors surrounds Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh who abandoned Egypt's traditional gods for the worship of Aten. His radical changes extended to his private life as well. Some accounts suggest he blurred the lines of custom and tradition in ways that scandalized the court. While evidence remains debated, his reign demonstrates how the pharaoh's intimate choices could destabilize an empire. Forbidden unions were dangerous because they could spark political unrest, anger powerful families, or challenge the authority of the priesthood. A pharaoh's passion, if misdirected, could undo years of stability. Queens were not silent companions. They were active participants in shaping Egypt's destiny. Figures like Nefertari, and Hatshepsut wielded influence that went far beyond the chamber. Their roles as consorts gave them direct access to the pharaoh, allowing them to whisper advice, manipulate decisions, and secure positions for their children. Hatshepsut took this power further than any other. Initially queen consort, she transformed her influence into direct rule, declaring herself pharaoh. Her story demonstrates how intimacy could serve as the first step toward absolute authority. Even when queens did not claim the throne, they controlled succession. By bearing heirs and securing their rise, queens determined the future of Egypt's dynasties. Their ability to command intimacy was inseparable from their ability to command politics. Religious officials held a complex role in the pharaoh's private life. On the one hand, they sanctified his unions, linking them to divine order. On the other, they acted as guardians of custom, ensuring that the pharaoh did not stray into practices that could anger the gods. Priests had enormous influence because they controlled ritual knowledge. If a pharaoh's intimacy was seen as impure or misaligned, priests could interpret disasters as divine punishment. This gave them the power to challenge even the king. Thus, while the pharaoh was supreme, his private practices were always under the shadow of religious scrutiny. For Egyptians, death was not the end, but a continuation. The pharaoh's sexual vitality was believed to accompany him into eternity. Tomb inscriptions, amulets, and funerary texts often emphasized renewal, fertility, and eternal union. In the afterlife, the pharaoh would continue his role as Osiris, joined with his consort as Isis, ensuring the cycle of life never ended. This belief explains why certain artifacts and symbols were buried with kings. They were not merely treasures, but tools to guarantee eternal pleasure, power, and creation. For the pharaoh, intimacy was not temporary, it was an eternal duty. Despite their centrality, these practices were shrouded in secrecy. Official inscriptions rarely mentioned them, and when they did, it was cloaked in divine metaphor. The pharaoh's humanity was deliberately hidden to preserve his image as a god. This secrecy created the aura that still surrounds Egypt today. The silence of the monuments, the half-erased hieroglyphs, the mysterious tombs, all hint at truths too dangerous to be fully recorded. What we piece together comes from fragments, foreign accounts, and archaeological whispers. Yet even those fragments reveal a world where passion was power and desire shaped history. A civilization built on hidden intimacy. When we step back and look at Egypt's grandeur, the pyramids, temples, art, and longevity, we must acknowledge the unseen foundation. The pharaoh's hidden practices were not side stories. They were central to how Egypt functioned. Through unions, rituals, and secrets, pharaohs maintained divine authority, secured political alliances, and ensured dynastic continuity. The empire's stability, in many ways, depended on the pharaoh's ability to control his passions, using them wisely, strategically, and in alignment with both human politics and divine expectation. Before we uncover the final chapter, pause for a moment. Look at the pyramids, those eternal mountains of stone, and ask yourself, what secrets still lie buried inside them? Historians speak of battles, monuments, and dynasties, but the truth is that much of Egypt's real story was written not in the open, but in whispers behind sealed doors, in rituals no outsider was meant to witness, and in tombs where even death could not silence desire. This chapter is not for the faint of heart. What you are about to hear will take you deeper than any textbook ever dared to go. By the end, you will see how pharaohs carried their most private practices into eternity, how archaeologists are still uncovering fragments of forbidden truths, and how Egypt's legacy of power and intimacy continues to shape our imagination today. With me until the very end, because what you're about to discover will change forever the way you see the ancient world. The Egyptians believed death was not an ending, but a continuation. The pharaoh, as Osiris reborn, would enter the afterlife still carrying his divine role. His sexual vitality, his unions, his rituals, none of it was left behind. Instead, they were preserved, enhanced, and projected into eternity. Tomb paintings and carvings reveal this belief in subtle ways. Some show the pharaoh and his queen together in symbolic postures of creation, ensuring that their bond would outlast mortality. Funerary spells often included language about renewal, rebirth, and endless union. Just as crops sprouted after the Nile's flood, the pharaoh's power was expected to regenerate endlessly in the afterlife. Artifacts buried with kings reinforce this truth. Amulets symbolizing fertility, carvings of protective goddesses, and sacred oils all pointed to a desire not only to preserve the body, but to preserve vitality, intimacy, and continuity. To the Egyptians, the pharaoh's role as lover and creator was eternal. Every tomb was more than a grave, it was a cosmic stage. Hieroglyphs lined the walls with prayers and invocations, but also with veiled references to hidden practices. Inscriptions sometimes described the pharaoh as beloved of Hathor or the seed of Osiris, language that hinted at both divine lineage and intimate power. The arrangement of chambers within tombs also reflected symbolic unions. Some scholars suggest that the architecture itself was designed to echo the womb of the goddess Nut, enfolding the pharaoh in an eternal embrace. Even the orientation of certain burial sites, aligned with the rising sun, spoke of renewal, rebirth, and the eternal cycle of creation. The tomb, then, was not only a resting place. It was a sanctuary of eternal intimacy, a place where secrets were locked away from mortal eyes, but preserved for the journey into forever. Queens were not excluded from this eternal destiny. As partners of the pharaoh, they often shared his tombs, his rituals, and his legacy. Their presence was essential, for without the queen, the pharaoh's cosmic balance was incomplete. Queens were sometimes depicted as protectors in funerary art, holding the pharaoh, embracing him, or offering him the symbols of eternal life. Their bodies and spirits were believed to merge with his in the afterlife, continuing the divine partnership that secured the stability of Egypt. In some cases, queens commissioned their own elaborate tombs, filled with imagery of intimacy and divine favor. These tombs remind us that women, too, carried immense power, not just in life, but in the eternal cycle of creation and rebirth. For centuries, Egypt guarded these secrets carefully, but modern archaeology has begun to peel back the layers. Inscriptions once thought to be purely poetic have been reinterpreted as coded references to hidden practices. Figurines and artifacts, dismissed as decorative, have revealed symbolic meanings tied to fertility, union, and desire. In the Valley of the Kings, certain tombs contain imagery so unusual that scholars debate their meaning. Some see them as metaphors for cosmic creation, others as veiled records of intimate practices too sacred to describe openly. These discoveries challenge us to look beyond the surface and recognize how central intimacy was to Egypt's worldview. Papyrus scrolls, too, provide glimpses into private life. Some medical texts contain references to fertility rituals, herbal remedies linked to desire, and ceremonies meant to ensure vitality. While much remains fragmentary, the pieces suggest a society where private life was deeply entwined with religion and politics. The pharaohs knew that mystery itself was a weapon. By concealing their private practices, they kept the people in awe and preserved the illusion of divinity. Even their closest subjects did not see them as mere mortals. They were gods, and gods must remain untouchable. This secrecy explains why so much was erased, coded, or left unspoken. The less the public knew, the more they believed. The aura of divinity depended on silence, and the pharaohs were masters of maintaining it. Even today, This silence shapes our fascination. The pyramids and tombs seem to whisper of things unspoken, their walls heavy with secrets that historians are still trying to decode. It is precisely because so much was hidden that Egypt's allure endures. The pharaohs are long gone, but their hidden world still captivates us. From novels to films to academic debates, we return again and again to the mystery of Egypt's private life. Why? Because it touches something universal. At its heart, the story of Egypt is the story of power and intimacy, politics and desire, divinity and mortality. These are not relics of the past. They are eternal human themes. The pharaohs simply magnified them, weaving them into the destiny of a civilization. Their legacy reminds us that history is not only about wars and monuments. It is also about the hidden forces, love, passion, secrecy, that shape the fate of nations. Egypt understood this better than any other culture, and it built an empire that still endures in memory because of it. The most profound truth may be this: the pharaohs did not want us to know their secrets. They erased, concealed, and disguised them. And yet, across millennia, fragments survived. Every tomb, every inscription, every artifact is a whisper from the past, daring us to look deeper. What we find is not scandal, but humanity. Pharaohs may have been gods to their people, but they were also men and women navigating desire, ambition, and fear. Their hidden practices reveal their vulnerability as much as their power. In their intimacy, we glimpse not only their divinity, but their humanity. Even with modern science, countless questions remain unanswered. Did certain rituals truly take place as described in myths? Were rumors of forbidden unions fact or invention? How much of Egypt's silence was deliberate, and how much was lost to time? Perhaps we will never know. Perhaps the greatest legacy of the pharaohs is that they left us with questions. Their monuments stand as symbols of permanence, but their private lives remind us that mystery itself is eternal. And maybe that was their final act of power, to ensure that thousands of years later, we are still searching, still wondering, still captivated by the secrets they never intended to share.